Hey Overwatch, how's pro play going? Alright, that's a little weird, but it is Crazy Raccoons. They have Junbin. I mean, I literally just made a video on his ball. Let's look at a different match. Surely this is just Korea being Korea. They do that sometimes. Let me look at another region. What happened to the meta? It appears we all must admit it to our favorite ranked 1 tricks. Torb and Sim are meta, and they're being played everywhere. This isn't the result of a patch or any specific buff or nerf. This is just the meta evolving as it always does. This comp somewhat started out as an anti-Hazard comp, using Sim Teleporter to get through difficult rotations that Hazard is adept at punishing, while Torb uses his lack of damage fall-off and high survivability to go pretty much wherever he wants and shoot the bad guys, finally using Ball to disrupt Hazard's engagements even further. This counter comp, however, apparently turned out to be a little too effective, to the point that not only are Hazard and Genji no longer meta, but hardly seeing playtime anymore at all. This meta is absolutely bananas, and it's quickly turned into pick any tank, pick either Sim or Torb, and then let the roulette wheel at your local casino choose the rest of your comp. If you know what a meta comp usually looks like, you might be experiencing sweating, heart palpitations, or hyperventilating, but don't fret, we're gonna get through this. This video will look at VEC versus New Era from Korean OWCS, where the team comps being played were like nails on a chalkboard. Together, we're going to examine this, and hopefully by the end, we can get an understanding of what exactly is going on with the meta right now. Oh, and also, we're going to look at an entire match this time, rather than just one map, which I'm hoping is going to give you more perspective. Feel free to let me know if you prefer the one map or full series format in the comments. The game starts out on Antarctic Peninsula, with VEC, which I'll be calling Vesta, rolling out on a comp that looks strange but isn't all that unfamiliar. Maga, Juno, and Brig had an entire meta with them being played together, and Venture is known to be good with Maga. The real interest comes from the Torb here. With a lack of fall-off and a 2-shot kill on most heroes, it's come to a lot of people's attention that in many cases, Torb just does Sojourn things better than Sojourn. He snipes, he obliterates tanks, and because of his overhealth and shotgun, he can brawl really well, much like a Reaper. He's also able to win duels with most DPS heroes, making him very powerful at controlling enemy off angles while taking some of his own. New Era roll out on Sigma, with Torb, Sim, Kiriko, and Ana. Sigma with Ana and Kiriko isn't all that strange. Sigma is really good at punishing enemy engagements with his accretion, and Ana can do the same with sleep and anti-nade. Kiriko takes advantage of the fact that Sim isn't going to play all that aggressively and thus won't need much healing. In a way, this comp has 4 DPS, since Kiriko and Ana are being played almost solely for their aggressive damage value rather than for their healing and sustain. Now, I already explained Torb, but Sim feels like the strangest pick here. Symmetra right now acts similar to Torb in terms of brawl. It's really scary to fight against a Sim with max beam, but in truth, the vast majority of her value comes from Teleporter. If the other team is on an aggressive composition like Hazard, Sim will teleport her team away from enemy engagements. If the other team is on a passive, more spam-based composition like Sigma, then Sim can use her teleporter to help surround or engage on her opponents. I want to use this first map as an example as to why the faster comps that we're used to, like the Maga that Vesta is running, don't really work into the Sim Torb that New Era is running. Vesta quickly take control of the left side of the map, using Finally's Venture to make Archie teleport back to his team, and forcing Ruler to fall back to his supports. Ruler goes for a rock onto Farmer. This would be huge if it hits, since Farmer would most likely have his armor chunked and have to give up all the space his team just took. The rock misses, and Farmer uses this opportunity to go for an aggressive pin into New Era's backline, but he's made a huge mistake. Not only does MCD still have both cooldowns, but Finally doesn't have Dig, and the rest of Vesta is still way on the other side of the map. With no way to put pressure onto MCD's Ana, both cooldowns get invested into Farmer, who is basically atomized by the damage coming from New Era. This is all it takes to win the teamfight, and seeing that they're trying to play Maga into both Ana and Sigma, Vesta switch over to the Lucio Kiriko, aiming to use Suzu and the damage pressure from Lucio to put more pressure onto MCD, and sustain through the anti-nade and sleep. While setting up for this next fight, New Era show us the power of Torb's spam. Dodo, with the help of Kiwis, play on a really wide but lengthy off angle, shooting almost all the way to Vesta's spawn. It takes so long to force out Dodo that by the time he's gone, Farmer is walking up without any of his armor and is once again obliterated, forcing another reset from Vesta. Farmer has had enough of getting outdistanced and picks Ramatra. Ram may be a bit slower than Maga, but he can use his shield to get past that pesky spam and finally go for the engagements that Vesta want to look for while playing Venture. Vesta is able to successfully force out Dodo's angle, and this time finally get a successful engagement onto Ruler. And RT TPs them away. All that work for nothing. But MCD is caught out, and with the help of Finally's Venture, they snag a kill onto the Ana. Unfortunately, Vesta is against Torb Sigma. Just the action of chasing this Ana kill makes Farmer lose almost all of his health, so Ruler pops the Flux to finish him off and win the teamfight. Yeah, if you can't tell by now, playing aggressive tanks in this meta may just be your 13th reason. Okay, one more reset. Surely with all of these ultimates, Vesta can make something happen. They finally get full control of the left side of the map. Finally goes for a flank and... Ew! MCD hits a sleep dart and finally gets finished off, but it's okay. Farmer is finally here with a solid engagement onto a low HP Ruler. And there's a Sim TP. And there's a Torbolt. And Vesta lose this round with only one kill to their name. Mazel tov. That's fine. There's always next round to not play an aggressive tank. Surely Farmer's head isn't that thick. It's the same comp matchup. Vesta start off the round taking control of the far side of the map. They want to force New Era over to the point so they can go for a strong engagement with Venture's Dig and Maga's Slam. Finally manages to get a really good dig onto New Era's backline, but just one look at this overhead and you can see exactly how frustrating this must be for Vesta. Kiwi isn't even playing for heals. He's on an off angle 20 miles away, and sure, Finally has an engagement that Farmer can follow up on, and they even get a kill, but Archie just TPs their team away. After investing all of their resources into one spot, Maga comps have to stabilize, and that's where the pain really comes in. New Era start taking control of all of the map space, the high ground, spawn side, even putting Ruler on point. Farmer pretty much has to try and stop this, which gets him slept, rocked, and sent to spawn. I think is something funny to note, Kiwi's barely healed at all this fight. There's so much damage coming from Sig and Torb that Vesta can't really do any poke that Kiwi's would need to heal. This guy was flanking the whole fight on Kirika. For the next fight, Vesta has conceded that they are bashing their heads into a brick wall. And the solution is to smash harder. Finally is now onto the Genji and... What's that? Vesta lost 2 before even walking past the choke? Yeah, that's about right. Next fight, Vesta go for a different rotation, which should help them avoid some of the poke they've been suffering from. But Ruler isn't about to let it happen so easily. See, if Ruler gets pinned by Farmer, he can usually live with the help of his shield, Kinetic Grasp, and Kiwi's Suzu, which would force the Maga to reset and take tons more spam in the process. This means that Ruler can pretty much hard flank on Sigma without being punished, which he does. Farmer gets a kill onto Dodo while walking up, but finally gets picked before the fight. Ults get traded, and can you tell why I'm being so brief and quick with this map? If you need any reason why faster comps with Maga and Hazard are falling out of the meta, just look at this map. Nothing is impossible, but it's absolute misery to try to force those heroes into compositions like this. The last fight isn't much better. Vesta runs in, New Era run out, and Any easily take the first map. It's at this point in the series that Vesta decide to put both hands on the keyboard and quit forcing insanely fast compositions, so stay tuned, because this match is anything but boring or one-sided. Just know that this map is a great example of why we won't be seeing much Hazard or Maga in this meta. This next map will be New Queen Street, and I want to use this opportunity to highlight how these comps play into each other, as well as what plays both teams are trying to look for, and why. If last map had questionable team comps, this one has schizophrenia, and it's absolutely off its meds. The teams roll out on these compositions, and I roll out of my bed at night in a cold sweat from this absolute nightmare. We already more or less understand Torb Sim. Hate crime the tank, run away. So let's talk about the tanks and supports instead. Starting with Wrecking Ball, this seems absurd, but let's think of it like this. If Sim and Torb make playing frontline difficult, and they're really good at running away from engagements, a tank that doesn't need to play frontline and is super mobile would be ideal, hence the ball pick. You may ask yourself, why is something like Doomfist or D.Va not being played? Well, ding ding ding, you'd be right. While we won't cover those heroes in depth in this video, they're both quite viable in this meta, especially D.Va. That being said, Ball is favored because his hypermobility and crowd control options have better uptime, his mid-fight sustain is a bit better with shields, and he can function without virtually any help from his supports. Now let's talk supports. Without a tank that needs much help, we once again end up with supports acting as 3rd and 4th DPS. This context makes these support comps actually make a lot of sense. Kiri acts the same as she did for New Era on the last map, and the main difference between Ana and Moira is that Ana wants to go for big and fast hits with her cooldowns, whereas Moira wants more sustained hits and can better help her DPS fight on angles. To start off the fight, we once again see the Torb and Kiriko off angle from Dodo and Kiwi's, which is matched by the Ana and Torb from Vesta. MCD and Archie try to work their way up on the main tunnel side, while Wu-Chan and Architect do the same. The main difference in setup is that the tanks are playing for different options. Fearful cannot risk Jinsung taking control of this main high ground and virtually has to set up around here to deny the Ana, which leaves Farmer room to overload the fight in the center of the map. Minute looks to walk forward and fight for this high ground, but an engagement from Fearful quickly sends him off the map. With Jinsung alone and isolated, Wu-Chan has to TP over for the save, but the overhead tells us that this fight is over for Vesta. As you'd know if you've seen my dive video, if you get surrounded in Overwatch, you lose. New Era really seemed to be a fan of this Kiriko and Torbjorn off angle, because much like Daniel, they're back at it again. Architect and Minute run over to fight this, and Fearful tries to overload, making it a 3v2. But this shows the strength of Vesta's support comp. Unlike Moira, who lacks ranged threats and usually has to be somewhere to apply pressure, Jinsung's choice of Ana means he doesn't need to commit his position to anywhere specific early in the teamfight. This means that if, hypothetically, New Era were to send 3 people somewhere that are far away from their Moira and Sim, Jinsung will always be in a position to punish them for it, and that he does. A sleep dart onto Fearful is all it takes for this teamfight to turn in Vesta's favor. After Archie gets picked as well, we see that not only Dodo managed to get a pick onto Jinsung, but New Era invests 2 ultimates despite still being down one in the fight. Why? What's going on here? Bear with me, because this is a bit of a complicated concept, and when I'm scripting and recording audio, I can't always be sure how the visuals will pan out. But I'll try to make this easy to understand using an example from Lijiang Tower. Many compositions require taking angles around the other team. Both teams usually put their tank in one spot with their hit scan and flex support behind them, and then the flex DPS and sometimes main support will try to take a different part of the map. The goal is for the off angle to create a big enough opening for the tank to push in aggressively. When this push happens, the angle collapses, so to speak, and the flex DPS and tank are now more or less in the same spot and fighting aggressively, so the backline has to push up to help them. The other team's off angle often doesn't have time to retreat back to their core before the fight is lost, and even if they do have time, it usually won't help them win because the opponent's backline is uncontested. So instead, they attack the enemy backline that is moving up to help the frontline. This is commonly called hitting their tail. When the other team's frontline engages, if you're on an off angle, you can still win by hitting their tail. Utilizing this, Dodo and Kiwi's hit Vesta's tail. This secures a pick onto Jinsung, so they invest ultimates and then get another onto Architect. Fearful is back from spawn since, Wrecking Ball, and things get really chaotic. Dodo gets picked, Fearful then invests Minefield, leading to both Minute and Wu-Chan's death. While this fight almost went the way of Vesta due to the slower playstyle of Jinsung's Ana, it was the slower speed of his rotations that swung the fight back towards New Era. Looking at next team fight, Archie invests Simwall, and using Coalescence as well, Any capture the team fight and get eliminations onto Jinsung, Farmer, and Minute. At this point in the series, Vesta hasn't won a single teamfight. Hell, they've barely gotten any kills at all. You're probably wondering why I'm even covering this series at this point, and well, something to know about teams at the top level, especially in Korea, they just don't know when to quit. Seeing the incoming engagement from New Era earlier, Architect tossed a TP behind them to try to hit their tail, but New Era's rotation was much faster than anticipated. This means that there was nobody to look at Architect and Wu-Chan, and now that the kills came out, they're deep in enemy territory. This looks like a huge stagger, looking to seal the deal for New Queen Street, but it's actually going to turn into Vesta's saving grace. To keep pushing the point and also deal with the flankers, New Era goes for a split, sending MCD and Fearful to their backline, while leaving everyone else forward. Not really sure what Any was cooking here though, since they pretty much immediately let MCD get picked off. Architect follows up with a kill onto Dodo, but Farmer also gets traded in the process. Being down 3-4 in the teamfight, New Era try to shove their remaining members into a small room with Jinsung and Minute, trying to nab these kills before Architect and Wu-Chan can exist, and they almost do, if not for the Nano Boost, which finishes off Archie and Kiwi's. Finally, Vesta are on the board. Next fight plays a bit like first fight. Vesta want the primary high ground for their Ana and commit Minute and Farmer up there to help, while Architect and Wu-Chan play for the far side of the map. Seeing that Wu-Chan is too far to help, Fearful, MCD, and Archie go onto Jinsung and secure the kill. This fight is looking good for New Era, but there's a problem. MCD and Fearful have gone completely different directions. The Moira is now isolated, but there's even more. Dodo and Kiwi's have flown too close to the sun with their off angle, and are now at the same store as my dad buying milk. Gone and never to be seen again by anyone in this teamfight. It's a mere matter of forcing out Fearful before Wu-Chan and Minute can secure a kill onto MCD. Archie also gets picked in this skirmish because Dodo and Kiwi's are still gone like the wind and not really participating in the teamfight. New Era full reset, and we finally see Vesta with some confident map control. Jinsung has swapped over to the Moira now, so the comps are mirrored, and this was just not on my OWCS bingo card. Nonetheless, we see Wu-Chan playing a lot like Kiwi's, playing for a wide off angle and more or less DPSing despite playing support. While both teams press Q on the point, Archie decides that Wu-Chan is girl-bossing a little too close to the sun, and Wu-Chan makes sure that Archie knows how to spell daddy. Minute gets picked by Fearful's minefield, but there's just no way that New Era can stop Vesta from getting the checkpoint. There's lava all over the place, and Farmer has replied with a minefield of his own. Kiwi certainly tries to contest, but is met with a terrible fate. Vesta managed to capture the checkpoint, but they aren't without losses. Missing both Jinsung and Minute means that getting the lead at this point will be very difficult. When you're down players in Overwatch, you have the option to either try to force a pick to even the playing field, or retreat and wait for new members. Vesta go for what's honestly a pretty solid idea. An early slam from Farmer, with follow-up from Architect, could easily secure them a game-changing pick. But Wu-Chan is still hyped up from that pick onto Archie and is way out of position, meaning Architect isn't healed and gets picked off in this attempt. You'd expect Vesta to fully reset at this point, but no. They stabilize in the Mega Room, and now it's their turn to hit New Era's tail. With Fearful and Dodo pushed up, this backline is all too vulnerable. This engagement forces MCD's coalescence, which Vesta's backline simply runs away from, while Farmer finds and eliminates a completely separated Dodo. Once again, MCD gets caught lacking and kites way too far away from their team, meaning that they, once again, get picked for it. Observant viewers have probably noticed that Vesta is thriving in chaos. The more split these teamfights get, the more that Vesta seem to find openings in New Era's defenses. This extends into the next fight, where both teams use Simwall, but Archie is flying far too close to the sun with his off angle, and gets assassinated by Architect, and the same thing happens to Kiwi's shortly after. Vesta secure the lead, and look ready to even out the series. Minute and Wu-Chan start on the primary high ground, taking an off angle with Torb and Kiriko like we've already seen many times in the series. But Vesta isn't actually playing for an aggressive teamfight. Vesta wants New Era to commit aggressively, so that they can punish it with Kitsune, Minefield, and Lava. Fearful goes for the Minefield, which Vesta kite, and use Kitsune plus Farmer Slam to both clear the Minefield and chunk Fearful's health bar. Now New Era is corralled into a small area, so Vesta invest their own minefield as well as lava. New Era's inability to kite effectively or as a team once again give Vesta's openings here. MCD is in no man's land, and Dodo is split from Kiwi's, giving Architect a prime target to push with TP. Despite Architect getting picked, this fight still looks really good for Vesta, but we're about to see why map type matters. Vesta collapse onto Archie, who teleports away, but this collapse leaves their tail vulnerable, so their whole team has to stabilize in the hallway. Fearful then walks away with Robot in tow. Doesn't matter if Vesta is in a good spot to take this fight if the team fight is happening somewhere else. At this point, there is a long, stalled out fight where New Era push the point to the opposite side over time and slowly pick off Vesta, forcing a reset and giving us this new team fight you see on your screen right now. Both tanks are looking for enemy backline, and Fearful gets the much better engagement, forcing Vesta to stack. While being surrounded in this meta really sucks and could seal the deal for Vesta, New Era still has to stay on point, which Vesta responds with 4 ultimates, winning the teamfight, the map, and evening out our series 1-1. We've seen now the kinds of strengths and weaknesses that each team has. New Era is really good at taking and maintaining angles in the fight. but their kites and disengagements are often too split, meaning Vesta has something to punish. On the other end, Vesta is really good at these more chaotic mid-fights, and they're really good at kiting, but because they aren't as good at setting up or taking angles, they haven't seen success in nearly any teamfight that they played aggressively. We see the teams lean into these strengths with their comps on Numbani. New Era opts for a more passive and spam-based composition, replacing Ball with the Sigma and Moira with an Alari, leaning into the whole supports acting as DPS style that we've discussed prior, whereas Vesta roll out with Baptiste and Reinhardt, looking to remain more stacked and slowly take map space over time with TP and Rein Shield. This map will offer some great opportunities to discuss ultimates and how frontline tanks interact with all of the angles in this meta. Not that any of that matters right now, since Ruler, well...
No, wait. Wait.
Even a perfect Suzu from Kiwi's isn't enough to save him. Vesta slowly clear these high grounds, picking off Archie as well in the process, but New Era isn't about to give up this point just yet. Ruler is back from spawn, and Kiwi's is doing what most of my ranked teammates do on Kiriko, and flanking like an absolute freak, while MCD and Dodo try to take the angle behind the point. New Era choose the person with the worst sustain, MCD, to touch point, who is expectedly touched back while Dodo gets gapped in the Torb duel on high ground. But these angles do bear fruits finally, with Kiwi's finishing off Minute, and Ruler hitting a rock on Jinsung while his back is turned to help other people. This is the real benefit of comps that take angles to this extent. You have to choose one way to look at, and the way you decide not to look is bound to get some kind of value. While this has been a valiant effort to recontest the point from New Era, they're 2v3 and still don't have an answer to this Rein on point, giving Vesta the capture. One of the best ways to play Reinhardt is to find somewhere that the other team's squishies really want to play from, and simply stop them from doing it. This forces the enemy tank to fight you aggressively, which many tanks just don't win when getting slapped around by a 100 damage hammer. With Sim TP, you can put Rein in some really annoying positions, which Vesta does by sitting Farmer on this high ground, completely denying it from New Era. MCD decides it's not worth it, so we end up with New Era on the far back end of this lane, to which Vesta replies with yet another Sim TP, sending Farmer over there to clear this spot too. While this can be annoying and difficult to deal with, Rein's reliance on his shield is a major weakness that can be exploited. After taking two different positions over a short period, Farmer has less than half of his shield left, which gives New Era the chance to really lay into him. Jinsung, however, isn't quite ready for this, using Window to try to punish the aggression from New Era. While Vesta doesn't secure any kills, it's not like they're unhappy with these last 20 seconds. They got the cart all the way down the lane and have taken yet another corner. While kiting away from Vesta, Dodo and Kiwi's have ended up on a huge flank. MCD and Archer run into the building to do the same, and while Ruler may get left out to dry, Architect and Jinsung get eliminated by these flanks, leading to New Era winning this 4v3 over time after some ults get traded. Speaking of ultimates, now is a good time for us to talk about the ults in this meta. If you notice, a lot of the ultimates like Minefield, Lava, Sun, and Wall aren't necessarily ultimates known for getting a lot of eliminations or value. Instead, they are often used as a sort of get-off-me tool. Even the ultimates that commonly are used for aggressive value, like a Flux, Shatter, or Kitsune, often act as preventative measures. You don't want to engage somewhere that can get you fluxed or shattered, and you don't want to be stuck in an opponent's Kitsune with nowhere to run. Most of the ultimates in this meta are used unironically as zoning ultimates. They either force the other team to disengage and respect the threat of the ultimate, or they force the other team out of safe positions into the open, where the sheer amount of spam poses a major threat. We see this with the next team fight, where Vesta put their Rein on point and used Simwall. This makes direct confrontation difficult, since most of New Era's healing and damage won't go through the shield, but New Era's have to contest due to the threat of Farmer capturing second point, so they use Torbolt to make it just as dangerous for Farmer to stand on point as it is for Ruler to contest him there. This pressure means Vesta have to back away, and Architect gets picked in the process, meaning that more time gets ticked off the clock as Vesta soft reset to wait for their fifth member. Farmer begins to take the high ground along with Wuchan. Ruler doesn't like that, so he invests the Gravitic Flux, nabbing a kill onto Wuchan. Farmer then sees Dodo trying to help Archie control the room, so he shatters Dodo and goes for the pin, but it gets Suzu. Unfortunately, without Farmer on the front line, Even Jinsung's window just isn't enough to stop Ruler from running over Vesta, giving New Era the teamfight win. This next fight begins with New Era using Sim TP to attempt to control both this central high ground angle and the far side of the map, which would really put pressure onto Farmer's shield as he tries to walk up, but two can play at that game. Architect's TP allows Vesta to bypass that entirely and try to run straight over Ruler. This play would work for Vesta if they were actually able to get the kill onto Ruler, but since they aren't and they never cleared the angles or teleporter, 4 members of New Era are able to hit the tail of Vesta with the help of a Sim Wall and Kitsune Rush. This forces a soft reset from Vesta in the small room. Archie tries to take advantage of this but gets too close and falls over. Meanwhile, Dodo does the same from much further away with much greater success. That's not the only reason that this teamfight was so hard for Vesta though. They're no fools, and they know that sitting in a small room for extended periods into New Era's comp is a recipe for disaster. So as soon as he can, Farmer walks out with Architect to try and push Ruler away, making more space for his team, but again, we see these zoning ultimates playing such a crucial role for New Era. MCD invests the Sun, which means that Farmer has to step back to block it or let squishies in the room get hit. He chooses the latter, which picks off Architect, but Dodo decides he doesn't want to win, runs into the room, and gets picked as well. This incredible macro play with rotations and ultimate from New Era has been thrown away by the greed from their DPS. So even though Vesta undoubtedly played this team fight worse, we're down to a 3v3. Jinsung pops the window on the main angle, hoping to sustain Farmer while he swings on Ruler, and punish anyone who would dare say otherwise. Wu-Chan looks for a flank in this period, and after getting forced by Kiwis, Ruler pops the Flux, leading to Wu-Chan and Farmer getting eliminated. Vesta just cannot seem to get these angles right to save their lives. Either they take them and lose the duels, or they stack too much and get stuck. With one fight left, they have to find a way to— oh, they're down 2 at 25 seconds left. That's rough, buddy. Vesta do swap to the Sombra and manage to get a recontest, but they just don't have enough time to take angles, leading to the same situation as last fight, where they get stuck in a small room, and New Era keeps using zoning ultimates until they secure the teamfight and hold Vesta at the end of second. The next round sees New Era on attack, with both teams playing the same comps as last time. Without a Sigma to instantly explode, New Era will have to work for this first point capture. The two teams stack as 4 and have their Kirikos play to take angles by themselves. For New Era, this isn't just because their core doesn't need many heals, and it's actually for the purposes of scouting. Any don't want to just sit in this small room, they want to TP out. By having Kiwi scout Vesta's position, they're able to recognize a safe teleport spot, so they flip the map, which is when offense takes the defender's side of the map or vice versa. New Era start taking angles like we've seen from them thus far, and unfortunately, we see Vesta make the same mistake they made on Antarctic, and try to punish this by stacking as a group and running it down. This leads to Architect's death and Farmer being forced off of high ground. With no more decent positions left from their opponents, New Era get the point capture just as easily as Vesta did. This next fight sees Farmer swap off of Reinhardt onto Sigma, and using Teleporter, Ruler is able to take the early high ground, ending in this setup. If we look at where the angles taken by New Era converge, we can see that this lane is the poisoned position for Vesta. They can't walk into it without forcing Archie and Kiwis out. Ruler's position makes this extra difficult, since if Minute tries to walk forward to a position where he can actually see the Symmetra, he'll be getting pounded by Sigorbs. The appropriate counter for this is for Farmer to work his way up to this corner, eventually being able to shield Ruler off and force this angle duel to be a 3v2. Unfortunately, Farmer fails the QuickTime event and goes for a bit of a flank to rock Dodo. Without the threat of Farmer's rock, Ruler can just walk up and rock him. Ruler then pops the Gravitic Flux, which helps pick off Jinsung. Vesta try to flip the map, this time being the defenders trying to take the attacker's side of the map and stabilize in the room, but they're just unable to. New Era is now up in the series 2-1. At this point in the video, I'm hoping that you're really grasping the concepts of taking angles, hitting tail, map flipping, and zoning ultimates, since from here on, I'm hoping to use those terms to briefly describe what's going on from the macro, and look instead at the more interesting micro plays for each teamfight, so that everyone watching can get a grasp as to how each character and player are trying to accomplish these larger goals. Fourth map is Suravasa, And we are on the same comp matchup that we ended on for New Queen Street. The Moira pick is still no less jarring. On mirrored maps like Suravasa, jobs become simplified since the best position for each character becomes more obvious. For example, both Torbs want to be able to play the long sightline at the top of this staircase. What's less obvious is how exactly they're supposed to win this angle duel. As a general rule, most of the time that there is a deadlock on angle duels, it comes down to the tank to try and give their team an advantage. In this case, Farmer goes for a slam, synchronized with an overload from Minute, which forces Dodo's overload in turn and wins the angle for Vesta. With Minute set up in a strong position, Dodo has to rotate all the way around to take a different one, giving Vesta an early point capture. While the last slam was synchronized with his team and made a lot of space, nobody on Vesta is able to follow up on the next slam from Farmer, who gets forced to reset with their team. This gives Fearful the perfect opportunity to hit Vesta with follow-up, leading to New Era capturing the point. Even more than that, instead of hard committing with the slam like Farmer did, Fearful immediately exits for just a moment, goes back in, and continues this cycle. This kind of ball gameplay, which I touched on in my Junbin video, makes you much harder to force out, and in this case ends up killing Architect. New Era push in, get a very late stagger onto Jinsung, and force Vesta to reset. This next fight sees Vesta playing from the same position they did last time, and, well, let's just look at Dodo's POV. Yeah, so Farmer went for a boop onto Dodo, which ended up perfectly booping him into the same lane that Minute got booped to. But because of how it was timed, Minute just dies for this. Wu Chen gets picked shortly after, and Vesta have to concede the teamfight and the point. Unlucky. Between fights, Kiwis tries to aggressively flank Vesta's rotation, to which Wu Chen teaches Kiwis how to spell daddy. Being down 4v5, New Era opt to back off and give Vesta control of most of the space on point, but they don't give up enough space. Dodo also gets picked later, giving Vesta the first point capture again. This next fight features 9 ultimates on the board, and at first contact most of them are invested as you'd expect. The sim walls are used to make the enemy engagement harder, the coalescences are used to try to chase down a squishy, Wu Chan's Kitsune and Farmer's Mines are used as zoning ultimates. In this interaction, both Architect and Dodo get picked, but what I think was the crucial decision of this fight comes from Fearful. Despite all of these ultimates getting traded, Fearful conserves the minefield. After all of these ults, both teams needed a moment to reset and stabilize, so that was when Fearful chose to strike. This forces Vesta to rotate across the point, which, while not getting any kills, forces pretty much every cooldown that Vesta has left. Without Fade, Suzu, or Overload, Vesta is in a bad spot, and for some reason, Wu Chan still decides, nah, I'd win, and tries to take an angle on the high ground. Without Suzu, this forces him to TP away into Jinsung, and the two end up pocketing each other to survive Fearful's engagement, leaving Minute out to dry. Dodo finishes the fight with lava, and New Era has point control. Next fight, we see Wu Chan get hit with the same problem as we saw on last point. As Wu Chan tries to off-angle with Farmer's hit, as we've seen many times, Farmer opts not to go for the slam. This means Wu Chan gets chunked and has to TP over to Jinsung, but luck is not on Wu Chan's side. In any other circumstance, Wu Chan can simply be healed by his Moira, but with Fearful here about to slam, he has to Suzu immediately. We once again see a ball engaging on a Kiriko with no cooldowns that has a Moira healing her. Both supports are forced to pocket each other, and look at how much fun Farmer is having right now.
Maybe don't abandon your Kiriko, asshole!
This forces Vesta to use lava to stabilize on point, but it's yet again the same issue. With Farmer so low, both supports are yet again distracted with the same thing, and the DPS of Vesta get left out to dry. Farmer tries to clutch the fight with mines, but it's just not enough. New Era win this fight and the point. If there's anything to take away from Wu Chan this series, don't get both of your cooldowns forced when the enemy tank can still engage. Otherwise, you'll be playing catch-up for the whole team fight. We roll out for next fight with Wu Chan and Farmer once again fighting for the same space. But Wu Chan can't stop catching Ls. What is this Kitsune? MCD invests the Coalescence, and with the help of Dodo's lava, Vesta gets zoned off the point. You know first fight, when Vesta won the angle duel, and New Era were willing to give up the point capture to win the team fight? That's what Vesta should have done here, but Farmer decided that starving children in Africa are in desperate need of HP, which he donates to the other team in an attempt to stop the point capture. This forces the rest of Vesta to flip the map to try and save him, but Minute was unable to and got picked off. Even though all of Vesta lost map control, and Minute even died to save his life, Farmer is not done inting and goes back to the point, getting picked. Nah, if I'm Jinsung here, I am slamming on my keyboard like an ape. This guy must be pissed that Wu-Chan and Farmer are inting his games. Going into the next fight, Archie makes the mistake of placing TP early. Sim's teleporter should be used reactively so that you can't be moved away from it or let it get destroyed before you need it. Archie not doing this seals his fate pretty immediately. New Era reply to Vesta's frontline engaging by trying to push hard on their backline. Hey, dear viewer, vocab check, what's that called? That's right. New Era hits Vesta's tail. Architect gets picked, but not before investing Wall, which manages to save everyone else on his team. Since Farmer got the kill so quickly, he's now back to the team fight and able to secure an elimination onto Dodo. Vesta capture the point, and New Era stagger brutally late, which bodes well for Vesta's chances. This next fight will decide if they lose the series or if the map and match continue. Most of Vesta is stacked, so Fearful goes for an engagement onto this high ground, but it's mistimed with no follow-up, and he gets forced out. So Vesta TP over to the other side of the point and try to engage on New Era's backline with lava. This is a good engagement, but it's actually a long-range snipe from Wu-Chan onto Archie on a completely different part of the map that opens the door for Vesta. They rush in as aggressively as they can, finishing off the kills and staying alive in this map. The final point is right nearby, so Vesta get to play this as if they were defending. Farmer is in an annoying spot that cannot be forced out pre-fight, meaning a slam is inevitable. Fearful goes onto Minute, stopping his potential follow-up onto this slam. This means that Vesta had the inferior engagement and must kite. That being said, Wu-Chan once again thinks he's Gojo. Fearful goes for a minefield onto Vesta's backline, who has kited to point, picking off Minute, and that's all she wrote for this fight. This is the setup for next fight. Nothing we haven't seen before with Farmer and Wu-Chan on the flank, but this play from Farmer absolutely is. Instead of just clearing the people on this angle with Wu-Chan, and then ensuring his backline has space to walk up, he just raw dogs the minefield on point. This means that while his backline was able to eventually get there, they had no chance of getting kills or investing ultimates on the way. Even more so, Wu-Chan yet again has nowhere to go and gets picked off. Now while I'd love to flame Wu-Chan more, this one's completely on Farmer. This has been a very common play this series, with Kiriko and Ball flanking and engaging together, but Wu-Chan and Farmer just can't seem to execute it properly. Let's ask Kiwis and Fearful how this is actually supposed to be performed. After Vesta's backline walk up, Fearful goes for a roll-through on this group, with Kiwis at a distance to start with. Crucially, the rest of New Era actually flipped the map with this play, with Archie teleporting behind and MCD plus Dodo running it down with ults. The same play that has lost Vesta so many fights was just masterfully performed by their opponents. Ouch. This next fight is super scary for Vesta, who barely managed to touch, but they actually managed to execute this play pretty reasonably. Wu-Chan is playing on an angle for Farmer Slam as always, but he plays it much safer than previous fights. Architect invests the sim wall for his team to walk up, and New Era reply with a lava and sim wall of their own, which is unfortunately just too much. In truth, if they didn't need to stay on point, Vesta would have likely won the team fight here, but the sins of their past are far too much, and New Era win the series 3-1. This meta is absolutely insane, and a lot of really complicated interactions are happening at every turn. It can be really hard to keep up with it even if you are well versed in macro. I was honestly afraid to make this video because I wasn't sure if I could do it justice. My goal was to use this video to show you guys that while SimTorb is chaotic and seems nonsensical, it still tends to function on a lot of the same things that other compositions do. Taking angles, flipping map, hitting tail, etc. are all things that almost every composition does in some way. I think that the most interesting thing I've pointed out in this video, that's absolutely worth studying more in depth, is the groups being played. We mentioned a lot of Kiriko Torb at the start and Kiriko Torb at the end, but I didn't even mention how this seemed to change based on the matchup and what the Moiras and Sims were doing. Each group has its own reason, and probably changes based on the position. That being said, This video is being scripted on the day that hero perks were announced, so it may not even be out before they are, and the meta will have likely completely shifted on its head by now. As soon as we see pro play with hero perks, I'll be making probably quite a few videos on it for you guys. For now, I have a question for you. Do you prefer the style I usually do, where I focus on one hero or one main question during a video while going over just one map? Or do you like this style, which goes over many facets of a composition while going over a series? Thanks for watching, and I look forward to your opinions in the comments.